What up, world? This is the GoalNet recording live here from outside Chicago. And today's video review is another one in our series of mats. I think we will have at least two more of those, actually probably three. More excitingly, today's video is about the Fiberbuilt Grass Series. Fiberbuilt Grass Series, for my money, I would say is the top of the line or the gold standard in the industry. That doesn't necessarily mean it's my preference, doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't have any flaws. And golf mats are very much a matter of opinion. I don't think that there's definitively, like people say TrackMan in place of launch monitor. I don't think that there's one mat that is definitively like that gold standard, like a Titleist golf ball is what all other things are measured against. But I do think that probably the closest thing to that might be the Fiberbuilt Grass Series, and I do believe this is probably, just as a general rule of thumb, the highest regard in the industry. But stay tuned and watch, because there's kind of a lot of curious things about this mat. And the piece I have here, as you can see labeled in the bottom left, is the flight deck. I did test proper full-sized Fiberbuilt Grass Series mats. Just for the purpose of today's video, we're going to show you the flight deck, but this hitting strip here is exactly the same. And one of the things I will say is that 90% of the industry are sort of the classic same shit, different shovel kind of mentalities. But the Fiberbuilt Grass Series and the Monster mat do things differently, versus, in my opinion, every other mat in the industry is sort of that same recipe of, round woven nylon fibers. And then the differences are the density of the fibers, the thickness of the fibers, and the type of back padding. But what's unique about Fiberbuilt Grass is that it is straight up and down, and we will dive into that right now. All right, so here we are zoomed in on the fibers. And as I mentioned, Fiberbuilt Grass Series does things differently. And the best way I would describe these fibers is that it is almost like a giant toothbrush. So I will get a piece of EZT Hybrid to compare that to in a second. But as you can see, the fibers in this mat just go straight up, straight up, straight up. Most of the other ones would almost be, better analogy, this is like a straight straw, and all the fibers in every other mat in the industry besides basically this and the Monster mat that I've tested use bendy straw type of turf, versus this one is a straight straw. But I would say sort of the standard analogy is this is like a giant toothbrush. So the mat on the left is obviously the Fiberbuilt Grass flight deck. The mat on the right is the EZT Hybrid, and a hitting strip as well. That mat is the official mat of TrackMan. It's what's TXG and Tour Spec and a ton of golf fitters use as well. The flight deck, but the Fiberbuilt Grass Series, not the version here in the flight deck, but their higher end version that has the stance mat and the rectangular hitting strip is what Club Champion uses. So again, both of these might be the most two respected mats on the market, but what I'd like to point out here, throwing them side by sides, are the differences. This mat here is what I would call the traditional T-line mat. If you didn't watch my last video or you're not familiar with that terminology, T-line mat is probably how 90% of the mats in the industry are constructed. And if anybody has ever played at a high-end golf club, but they have a day where they make you hit off the mats, odds are it is some variation here of this classic T-line mat. So you can even just see, looking at them from overhead, we will go down in a second and do a side-by-side profile, but you can see just looking at it, those fibers are going straight up and down, and those fibers are all rounded. So if we zoom in here, and look side by side, as I mentioned, each individual fiber here is like a bendy straw, which gives the turf a much firmer, denser feel versus here on the flight deck. You know, these fibers are straight up and down. They're pretty rigid vertically, but they're very soft side by side. So if you can imagine a club going through these fibers, you know, in the direction that you're hitting, it's actually rather soft. So that's a very, very unique design. And like I say, there's pros and cons in both, and favorites of both, but hopefully putting these two side by side really helps illustrate what is so unique about the Fiberbuilt Grass series. So we've defined what's unique about the Grass series. If you're not familiar with it, you might be wondering, why the hell is this so different? And so basically, probably the number one or number two complaint of people that hit in simulators a lot, and you know, for what we're talking about today really is people looking to buy their own golf mats, so people hitting at home. The number one and the number two complaints people have are that I get pain. You know, if I'm a good player, I hit down and through the ball, I'm gonna get pain because the mat is not soft enough. You can't, you know, hit under the turf and hit dirt like you do in real grass. Or secondly, that the mat is too grabby and doesn't feel realistic, which again gets back to that hitting down and through the ball. So people will complain with other mats that they're either getting pain or an unrealistic feel when they try and hit down and through the ball. And that is what Fiberbuilt tried to solve with the Grass series mat. So now when we look at it from the perspective of the club, very minimal pressure, and you can see that the fibers separate around my club and allow them to go all the way down and through to the bottom. So this material is very soft, so that I can hit down and through the ball very easily. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you know, this stuff is gonna flow very easily in the direction, and it's really hard to take a video and demonstrate this for. So hopefully people are getting the drift and bearing with me here, but doing my best effort. But it's really hard to show this on camera. But this basically allows you to go down and through the ball very effortlessly. It's probably not much showing up in the video here, but there's just minimal resistance on the club. When this happens, you just really can bounce your club through this turf effortlessly, and that's why I say this very well, you know, might be regarded as the gold standard and high-end hitting mats. So hopefully that explanation, again, very difficult to show on video, but hopefully you get the gist of it. The Fiberbuilt Grass series unequivocally delivers on its promise of enabling you to hit down and through the ball without those twisty, bendy straw, you know, afro style fibers, you know, tangling up your club. And I know many, many people that have joint pain which switch to the Fiberbuilt Grass series and say that their joint pain goes away. So there's, you know, no doubt in my mind that if you're looking for a mat and you are somebody that might hit 200 balls a day, or you might play in your home simulator 5 days a week, again, everybody's body reacts differently, and an at-home mat is such a personal preference. That's why I'm going to go through and try and help with everybody and share the journey I went through on these mats, taking a little detour from hockey content. But I think if I had to like blindly recommend one mat to somebody, which might be the safest, or at least to say narrow it down to two, Fiberbuilt Grass is going to be in that top two. Whether you use the product or not, if you have tried it in the past, again, if you're going to give somebody one or two recommendations to go narrow it down, Fiberbuilt Grass is going to be in your recommendations for sure. However, I didn't personally pick this for my at-home mat. I kind of found, I'd say, a couple things that aren't for me in it. And so let's dive into that. So the reason I didn't choose this for my at-home sim is a few reasons. One, as I mentioned, this is top of the line, and top of the line in 9 out of 10 cases comes with top of the line pricing. To Fiberbuilt's credit, they have a few different options. This is the flight deck. This is their cheapest option. I picked this up on Amazon for 70 bucks. And you could potentially just tape this down in your garage with double-sided carpet tape and have something else as a stance mat and get the benefits of Fiberbuilt for very inexpensively. But as you saw when I was just rubbing my club against it, it's very difficult having just the flight deck without the full base to stay in place. And if you buy their holder, which is a stance base, all of a sudden we're up into hundreds of dollars and you're getting a tiny little piece. Then they have something called the Hourglass, which is an hourglass shaped hitting mat. I believe it's maybe about 3x5 without having the dimensions in front of me. I'll try and insert some pictures when I go back and edit it. So if you're not familiar with Fiberbuilt grass, you can check it out. And that mat, I believe, is $700. So to get something that might be in the ballpark of the traditional 5x5 mat, which is what I was after, and is pretty standard for a home setup, you're talking some serious coin for that. So that's one of the reasons I didn't choose it point blank is I'm going to use this once or twice a week. I have a Rapsodo MLM2 Pro currently and a Garmin R10. I don't have a super high-end simulator like a TrackMan, and my simulator needed to come up and go down between uses. And so between the cost of it and then also the higher end Fiberbuilt mats have a giant expensive rubber mat they sit on, that helps with impact protection. But for somebody that was looking for a mat that I could pick up and take down, I was concerned that that wouldn't work for me. The second reason that I didn't pick the Fiberbuilt mat, to be honest, if this was something that I really wanted and, not getting injured hitting golf balls in your garage should be in the top of everybody's list, I would have spent the money. So one thing I want to say is I think all of the high-end golf mats are ridiculously expensive for what they are, but at the same point, I understand people have, support staffs that need to pay for, hopefully there's some R&D, although I don't see a ton of new mats coming to the market all that often. But it's also a relatively niche industry. So if your volumes are low, your prices are going to be high. I get all that. But again, my own personal opinion is that golf mats are very, very expensive. However, if I felt this was going to either perform on a, without a doubt better than anything else, or I only trusted this mat to prevent injuries, I would have bought one. I'd like to make that clear. So another reason I didn't justify spending the additional cash on this mat is this mat does deliver on, again, being easy to hit down and through the ball on, and I personally never had any pain hitting off of it. And I know a lot of people switched to this mat when they started off with something like a Country Club Elite. It was too firm, they started to get joint pain, they switched to the Fiberbuilt. There's like 8 million of that exact story because Fiberbuilt and Country Club Elite are probably two of the most popular brand names out there and very safe choices when you're starting out with a mat. So why don't I like this mat? I don't think it feels realistic. I absolutely think it delivers, enabling you to hit down and through on the ball. And I think because it's unique design and it's kind of fluffy, I think that you can swing on this thousands of times and it's very unlikely that you are going to get an injury. I don't have scientific data to back that up. That's just, empirical opinions. But it's not realistic. It's so soft, you can get under the ball. I think it can potentially give you artificially high launch conditions because it's so soft. It's going to enable you to sort of scoop right under the ball. And I believe the folks over at Rain or Shine created a golf video where they actually checked the launch conditions on some golf mats. They compared people hitting off grass and then they had them hit off 3 different mats and compared which mat most correlated to their strikes on grass. And for memory, check out Rain or Shine's YouTube channel. I'm sure it's right there. For memory, I think the Fiberbuilt artificially increased people's launch angles, which could increase distance, increase your descent angle. If you're launching it higher, it's going to fall down steeper. So this thing could potentially jack your numbers up. And then lastly, aside from the price and, like I say, artificial numbers, it's also a feel thing. This thing is very nice to hit off of. So I'm not saying it's a bad mat. I just don't think it feels like real grass. And I did want something for me to practice off of that felt like real grass. And I didn't see that in this mat. So those are the three main reasons why I didn't personally pick this for myself. This is a product that I purchased, and I also went to a simulator and a driving range which had the Fiberbuilt. I believe it's called the Studio Series, but again, I'll try and insert some pictures, so bear with me if I got a name wrong. But that is basically a stance mat, so something like the Easy Tee, which is made by Fiberbuilt. I think they call that the Fairway Series. So you have the Fairway Series as a stance mat, and then you have the Grass Series as the hitting mat. Very common combo. And I hit off that at multiple locations. And like I say, I enjoyed hitting balls off of it because it was very easy to hit through it, but I didn't find it to be natural, and it wasn't what I was going for. And so to justify the premium that Fiberbuilt's charging, I think I would have needed to have some sort of existing injury that I was worried about, or I would have had to love how that felt rather. Again, it's good to hit off of. It's sort of hard to convey. It's just sort of not realistic. It's almost artificial. And again, to be the top of the line, that just didn't really jive with me. So in closing, I just spent the last few minutes explaining why I didn't choose this mat for my personal mat and what I don't like about it. But overall, there is absolutely a reason that this is probably the gold standard in hitting mats, or at least, obtainable hitting mats at home. And, things that if you don't want to build your own mat and you don't want to be messing around with a custom hitting strip and a custom stance mat, these are all standard products which Fiberbuilt makes. So the things I love about this mat, I do believe it will reduce or prevent injuries. It absolutely enables you to hit down and through the ball. And the other great thing about Fiberbuilt is, there's the flight deck, there's the flight deck with the base, there's the hourglass system, and then there's the large rectangular system, which I believe is called the Studio Series. So basically they have, three different options for you. And if you want to build your own at-home mat, you can also buy a replacement hitting strip, which is going to look something like this, but be the Grass Series for anybody that wants to build their own at home. Even though Fiberbuilt wouldn't recommend it, they also don't stop you because you can buy a replacement piece. So the highs of it are that they do have a design, kind of based on no matter how the golfer, what your need is. Like this would be killer to put in your backyard if you wanted to hit off grass in your backyard but didn't want to chew the grass up kind of thing, because this base really wouldn't slide in the grass. So if you want to go super cheap and easy, they have that option. Or if you want to spend top of the line, and I think it's like $1,200 or $1,300 to get the left-hand, right-hand Fiberbuilt grass hitting strip with the two Fiberbuilt fairway stance maps. They do have that top of the line left-hand, right-hand system, which is sick. I mean, that really is a beautiful system if you're doing a top of the line sim in your house, like a TrackMan or a GC Quad. So Fiberbuilt has that option for everybody. And as I mentioned, theirs is different. And I always, for anybody that's also a hockey player and follows any of my hockey goalie content, I love it when companies do something different, because if all the products in the market are gentle iterations off the same thing, the market never grows and advances. So I love that Fiberbuilt has created this Grass Series because it is different, it is unique. And like I say, if you're worried about injury prevention, or you just want something that you can really work on hitting down and through the ball, and you're not concerned about having a perfect one-to-one feel correlation to a fairway, this is absolutely kick-ass. And like I say, I completely understand why people love this. It's just not the one for me. So when we go back to negatives, just to recap, price, you know, it is potentially the best or the top of the line, has a price to come with it. Does allow you to hit down and through, should prevent injuries, but then that also gives you a not realistic feeling when we're calling realistic hitting off grass. So that is the Fiberbuilt Grass Series. I think it's going to appeal to a ton of people. It just wasn't my personal choice. But thanks for tuning in, and if you come back, we will do a review on the ECT Hybrid. Also be doing a video on the Monster mat, which is the most other unique mat in the market. And I'll give you a hint, I wanted to love that mat so much, but it has one fatal flaw that just basically killed it for me. And then also the Tartan Turf Champion mat / bullseye hitting strip, that goes by a couple different names in the marketplace depending on where you're buying it from. So this is the GoalNet signing out. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we're liking this little slight detour into the world of golf home simulator equipment.